in every, I would say every marriage relationship, you both come from a different background, and there has to come a common ground on which you meet together and communicate, and when there are these things that you don't understand, you face them dead on,
right?
With a loving relationship, and I think that's the key to the whole thing.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Deciding to Love. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz. It's a privilege to have you here today. And if you're listening to this around the time the episode has come out, it is January 1st, 2026. So happy New Year to you. Maybe you're recovering from a long New Year's Eve or still spending time with friends and family. And in light of that, I figured maybe I'd release a shorter episode today. I happened to come across some clips, some audio from an interview that I did with my grandfather a number of years ago about his relationship with my grandmother, his wife. They were married for 66 years. They've both passed now. But I don't know of a better example, in my life anyway, of somebody who truly decided to love, and then did so in an absolutely beautiful way, with warmth and kindness and graciousness, and even romance to the very end. I'm going to share, in fact, I'm going to actually do a full-length episode about their relationship in the coming weeks. But today I'm just going to share some clips from that interview, and specifically as it relates to the idea of empathy. Look, the show is called Deciding to Love, and if you missed the trailer, I talked about how the Latin root of the word decide means to cut off, as in to cut off all alternatives. If you're going to have a great long-term romantic relationship with your partner, you both need to be all in. You truly need to decide to love each other. But once you've done that and you've moved on from wondering whether or not to commit and waiting to feel like committing, but you've just decided to commit, I think one of the most important first steps in building a great long-term romantic relationship, especially exemplified by my grandfather, is to consistently implement empathy in your relationship. Empathy at the root level, of course, just means to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, to consider their feelings, their desires, their needs, their psychology, and in the context of a romantic relationship, how that person feels most loved. And my grandfather demonstrated this beautifully in his relationship with my grandmother, and talks about this concept of empathy in these clips I'm about to share. Now, keep in mind, when I did this interview with him, he was 100 years old. In fact, I'm going to share a picture from a walk that we went on when I visited him in Minnesota and we did this interview. We went out for a walk because even at 100 years old, he prioritized his health and would regularly go out and exercise. We were out on this walk actually, and he commented on the fact that they had recently dropped the speed limit in the neighborhood to 20 miles an hour, and so he needed to tone things down, which was just great. Beautiful example of his sense of humor and kind of how he looked at life. But keep in mind that at 100 years old, the conversation is a little bit slower, and I want you to actually let that be a benefit to the content that my grandfather is about to share in this conversation. We have a tendency in our lives these days, myself included, by the way, to go 100 miles an hour all the time. And we're easily distracted and we speed things up. Take some time, pause for just a few minutes here, and soak in what my grandfather has to say from that amazing marriage, the 66 years together. And I think you'll take not only some encouragement and inspiration, but challenge from it as well. And then I'll share some thoughts at the end. In order for two people to develop a deep relationship. As you said, it's two people, two different backgrounds, two understandings and perspectives on life. It does require a deep amount of empathy if you want to build a really strong relationship. Yes. And again, you demonstrated that so beautifully with Grandma. Can you talk just a little bit about how to develop that sense of empathy for somebody else?
I mean, it may sound simple, but it is not. It's a matter of a loving relationship. And if the love is there, it endures. And you go through things and you learn together because you love one another. And the differences that you have. There's in every, I would say in every marriage relationship, you both come from a different background, and there has to come a common ground on which you meet together and communicate, and when there are these things that you don't understand, You face them dead on,
Right.
with a loving relationship, and I think that's the key to the whole thing. In marriage, there's a blending of all of us are different. All of us have come out of different backgrounds, and when you step into a marriage relationship, which is so personal and so highly relational, that you really there's got to be a real love there that can bridge the gap.
So we've talked a little bit about the affection that you demonstrated for Grandma. We've talked a little bit about the empathy that you demonstrated for Grandma. When I think about empathy, I think in order to be empathetic with somebody, we have to set aside our preferences for the other person. And at the root of that type of behavior is the concept of service.
Yes.
And yet again, you demonstrated this concept of service for somebody else in your relationship with Grandma. Will you talk a little bit about what's at the root of that service-oriented heart that you had and the way that you took care of her?
Again, it sounds so simple, but it isn't. But it is this love relationship that you love a person. I mean, you come to the place where you die for that person, and that's to me the core of the whole thing is willing to sacrifice yourself, and put yourself and your desires into second place, and that the relationship, desiring to get to know that one that you're married to, so that you get to know them, that the walls are down and the roof is off, and love is sacrificial. It needs it's and it's long suffering.
Yeah.
And these things, there are times when, that you got two personalities, and they have to blend into one, and where two different things are there. There's a friction.
For sure.
And you've got to live through those.
In our culture, I think our culture tends to define love more as a feeling than an action or a choice. As I've come to understand love, I understand it more as a choice that you have to make consistently. It is. Do you agree with that?
I agree with you, yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, if you will. What does it mean to choose over and over to love someone versus, again, as I think our culture tends to think, that there's this almost assumption, conscious or otherwise, that if we feel like we love somebody, then we act accordingly. But if we don't feel like we love that person, then we just kind of stop, we give up. Yeah. You can't have a long-term committed relationship the way that you and Grandma did without making that choice over and over again. Will you talk just a little bit about that as we close?
I think that where the big rub comes is that one of them only thinks of themselves, or maybe both of them do. And you need to please me.
Right.
Whereas if you're I think in a loving relationship, there is, what can I do to please the other one? It needs to, love is, to me, is a willing, and you don't look upon it as a sacrifice. It's a privilege. You're trying to win that person. There's always the desire to win that person. I wanted to please her. I wanted to do everything I could to make her happy. I had been criticized for the way that I did this.
How so?
They just felt that, I mean, they sometimes felt that I leaned over too far. But the feeling that was in my heart was, she's the one I want. And I want to please her. And I knew also we were trying to establish a home that in some respects was 180 degrees different from what she was experiencing.
Right.
That makes sense?
It does. Yeah.
And so this is what we worked on.
Wasn't that beautiful? Unfortunately, we lost my grandfather a couple of years ago at the amazing age of 101, and my grandmother passed away back in 2011. But they leave for us an amazing example of what a romantic relationship can be over the long years, the 66 years, despite the challenges that came along. At the end of that last audio clip, my grandfather alludes to something that you'll get more context about in the future full-length episode about their relationship. But unfortunately, my grandmother dealt with some pretty significant childhood trauma and as a result carried significant psychological challenges throughout her life. But my grandfather so consistently and graciously and warmly showed empathy and love toward her through all of that, and I think is a wonderful example for us. In closing, I want to leave you with a simple challenge. New Year's tend to carry with them or it New Year's resolutions, which most of us know don't tend to be sustainable. Instead of thinking about personal development and development of your romantic relationship in the context of New Year's resolutions, instead what I want to encourage you to think about is simple, sustainable habits. What's one thing that you can do every week that will show your partner love more effectively? And in light of today's conversation where we're talking about empathy, if we think about empathy, we're putting ourselves in the shoes of our partner. We're thinking about their desires, their needs, and maybe in particular, the way that they feel most loved. Maybe you've had a conversation about this at some point. Maybe they've just simply lit up in response to you showing them love in a particular way. You know that they feel most loved in this particular way. And what I want to encourage you to do going into the new year and certainly beyond is at least once or twice a week, just intentionally show them love in that particular way. You're setting aside your feelings, your interests, your desires, just like my grandfather talked about, and you're intentionally showing them love in a way that you know resonates with them. I want to encourage you to make that your resolution, if you will, as we go into the new year, particularly as it relates to your long-term romantic relationship. All right, that's all for today. Thanks again for joining me here on Deciding to Love, and I certainly wish you a happy new year as well.